The rope burned against Cordelia's neck as the crowd below bayed for her blood. Her hands, bound behind her back, trembled against the rough hemp that would soon end her life. The false accusation of cattle rustling had sealed her fate in Millhaven's makeshift court, where Judge Harwick's gavel had fallen like thunder. "Any last words, thief?" Sheriff Drummond called up to the gallows platform. Cordelia lifted her chin defiantly. "I never touched Rancher Brigham's cattle, and you all know it." Voice cut through the jeering crowd like a blade through silk. "Cut her down." Every head turned toward the stranger who sat astride a dust-covered stallion at the edge of the square. His hat shadowed his face, but sunlight caught the silver handles of twin colts at his hips. The crowd fell silent. Sheriff Drummond laughed. "Nervously, mister. This here's official business. The girl's been tried and convicted." The stranger dismounted with fluid grace, his spurs chiming against the hard-packed earth. "Tried by who?" "Harwick." He spat in the dust. "That man couldn't judge a pie contest fairly." "Now see here," Judge Harwick began, but stopped when the stranger's cold gray eyes fixed on him. "I see plenty. It's like how Cordelia Thorne's been framed to clear the way for someone else's land grab." The stranger's voice carried the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. "Question is, who benefits from her death?" Cordelia's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd never seen this man before, yet he spoke her name with certainty. His weathered face suggested a hard life, but his eyes held intelligence that cut through. The town's collective madness. "You've got proof of these accusations, stranger?" Sheriff Drummond's hand drifted toward his weapon. In one smooth motion, the stranger drew both pistols. The crowd stumbled backward. "My name's Kieran Blackthorne, and my proof's standing right there." He nodded toward a nervous man near the saloon. "Silas Crane's been mighty eager to see Miss Thorne swing. Might be worth asking why." Silas Crane paled. "Visibly, I don't know what you're talking about, don't you?" Kieran's smile was sharp as winter wind. "Then why'd you pay 3 men to move Brigham's cattle onto Thorneland last week? And why'd you make sure the sheriff found them there?" The crowd began to murmur, doubt creeping into their bloodlust. Cordelia felt a flutter of hope, even as the noose chafed her throat. "This is preposterous," Judge Harwick sputtered. "We can't halt a legal execution based on wild speculation." Kieran holstered one pistol and pulled a folded paper from his vest. "Legal? You call condemning an innocent woman legal?" He held up the document. "Here's a signed confession from one of Crane's hired men. Details everything." Silas Crane broke. "She was supposed to sell. I offered fair money for that land." "Fair money for land sitting on silver veins?" Kieran's laugh was harsh. "You figured killing her was cheaper than paying what it's worth?" Sheriff Drummond realized which way the wind blew. "Cut her down, deputy." As the rope fell away from her neck, Cordelia's legs buckled. Strong arms caught her before she hit the platform. She found herself looking up into Kieran Blackthorne's weathered face, seeing kindness beneath the hardness. "Easy now," he murmured, his voice gentler than she'd expected. "You're safe." Without thinking, she pressed her face against his shoulder, breathing in leather and sage and something indefinably masculine. For the first time in weeks, she felt protected. 3 days later, Cordelia stood in her modest cabin, watching Kieran repair the fence that Crane's men had destroyed. His shirt stretched across broad shoulders as he worked. She found herself studying the economical grace of his movements. He'd refused her offer to stay in town, instead camping on her property until things settle. Why? She'd asked that. First night, as they sat by his campfire. "Why what? Why save me?" "You don't know me." Kieran had studied her face in the firelight. "Maybe I know enough." Now watching him work, Cordelia felt something stir that had nothing to do with gratitude. When he straightened and caught her staring, heat flooded her cheeks. "Coffee's getting cold," she called, hoping her voice sounded steadier than she felt. He ambled toward the cabin, hat tilted against the morning sun. "Much obliged. This Colorado heat's something fierce." She handed him the tin cup, their fingers brushing. The contact sent electricity up her arm. "Where are you from, Kieran?" "Here and there." "Nowhere long enough to call home?" He sipped the coffee, watching her over the rim. "Good brew. My father taught me, said coffee could tell you everything about a person's character. What's mine tell you? Cordelia considered him seriously. That you're careful, observant, and ... She hesitated and lonely. In his expression, he set down the cup with deliberate care. Miss Thorne, Cordelia, please, Cordelia. Her name sounded different in his voice, warmer somehow. I won't be staying long. As soon as I'm sure you're safe, I'll be moving on. What if I don't want you to go? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Kieran went very still. Don't know what you're saying, don't I? She stepped closer, heart pounding. You saved my life. More than that, you saw me when everyone else saw only what they wanted to see. Do you know how rare that is? Cordelia, ... His voice carried warning. Not asking for promises. I'm just asking you to consider that maybe you found something here worth staying for. Before he could answer, hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Kieran's hand moved to his gun as 5 riders approached. At their head rode a man Cordelia recognized. With sinking dread. Marcus Vance, she whispered. Kieran's expression hardened. You know him? Crane's partner, one with real money behind him. Vance reined up 20 feet away, his pale eyes taking in the cozy domestic scene. Well, well. The condemned woman and her savior. How touching. State your business, Vance, Kieran said quietly. Business, Vance smiled, showing too many teeth. Why, I'm here to make things right. See, my partner Silas got a bit enthusiastic about acquiring this property. But I'm a reasonable man. Reasonable men don't frame innocent women for hanging. No, they don't. Which is why I'm here to make amends. Vance reached into his jacket slowly, producing a leather pouch that clinked with coin. $5,000 for the land, Miss Thorne. More than generous. And if I refuse... Vance's smile never wavered. Well, accidents happen, especially to folks living alone on remote properties. But you're not alone now, are you? His gaze shifted to Kieran, though I wonder how long your guardian angel will stay once he learns. The full truth about Cordelia Thorne. Cordelia's blood turned to ice. What truth? Oh, he hasn't told you. Vance's laugh was ugly. Our Kieran Blackthorne isn't just any drifter, darling. He's a wanted man. $500 bounty on his head for killing a sheriff down in Arizona. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Cordelia felt the world tilt beneath her feet as she stared at Kieran's profile. His jaw was set like granite, but she caught the almost imperceptible tightening around his eyes. Is it true? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Kieran's gaze never left Vance. Some truths are more complicated than they appear. How wonderfully evasive, Vance drawled. Shall I fill in the details, Miss Thorne? Your heroic savior put. A bullet through Sheriff Coleman's heart in Tucson, shot him down in broad daylight. You're half right, Kieran said, his voice carrying the weight of old pain. I did kill Coleman. But you left out the part where he was about to rape a 12-year-old Apache girl. Cordelia's breath caught. Vance's smile faltered slightly. Law doesn't see it that way, Vance recovered. Dead is dead, and you're wanted for murder. $500 is a tidy sum for a poor woman trying to hold on to her land. Touch that money, and you'll never see sunrise. Kieran's words fell like stones into still water. Brave talk for an outnumbered man. Vance gestured to his 4 companions. I count 5 guns against 2. Well, 1 really. Miss Thorne doesn't. Look the fighting type. Cordelia surprised them all by stepping forward. Her chin lifted in defiance. You want this land? You'll have to kill me for it. And if you think that makes you any different from the monsters you claim to represent justice against, then you're more foolish than I thought. Cordelia, get inside, Kieran murmured. No, she moved to stand beside him instead. I've spent too many years letting others decide my fate. If we're making a stand, we make it together. Something passed between them. Quick as lightning, but profound as thunder. Kieran's expression softened for just a moment before hardening into deadly focus. Your choice, Vance? Right away now, or face the consequences? Vance's laugh was brittle. 5 against 1. I like those odds. You miscounted, Kieran said calmly. The next seconds exploded in gunfire. Kieran moved faster than Cordelia thought. Humanly possible, his Colts clearing leather in one fluid motion. The first shot took Vance's hat clean off his head. The second shattered the gun hand of the man reaching for his weapon. But it was what happened next that stunned everyone. A rifle cracked from the cabin's window, and another of Vance's men toppled from his saddle. Then another shot from behind. The barn dropped a third rider. "Told you," Kieran said conversationally, not even breathing hard. "You miscounted." Two figures emerged from cover-weathered men with deputy stars pinned to their vests. Kieran Blackthorne, the older one, called, "Marshall's been looking for you." Cordelia's heart sank, but Kieran just nodded. "Deputy Fletcher, Deputy Morse, about time you caught up. Not here to arrest you, son." Governors issued a full pardon. Turns out Sheriff Coleman had a long history of unsavory behavior. Your testimony helped convict his accomplices. Vance's face went white. "This is impossible." "What's impossible," Fletcher continued, "is how men keep ending up dead around you. Vance Tucson's got some questions about those mining claims you've been acquiring. Seems folks have a habit of dying in accidents right before they sell to you." The remaining riders melted away like morning mist, leaving Vance alone and suddenly vulnerable. "Can't prove anything. Don't need to. Federal marshals are already at your main office." Funny thing about keeping detailed records. Eventually someone finds them. As the deputies led Vance away in shackles, Cordelia found herself alone with Kieran in the suddenly quiet yard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "So," she said carefully, "you're not an outlaw anymore." "No, I'm not. Does that change anything? About staying, I mean?" Kieran holstered his guns and turned to face her fully. "Everything's changed, Cordelia. Question is, what do we do about it?" She stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks. In his gray eyes, you could start by admitting what's been growing between us since the moment you cut that rope. Instead of answering with words, she reached up and touched his face. Her palm rough from work, but gentle against his stubbled cheek. Something worth fighting for. 1 month later, Cordelia stood in her kitchen, flour dusting her apron as she worked bread dough with practiced hands. Through the window, she watched Kieran breaking a wild Mustang in the corral he'd built. The horse was magnificent, tall spirit and fire, much like the man gentling it. The transformation of her small ranch had been remarkable. What was once a struggling homestead now showed signs of prosperity. New fencing, expanded corrals, a vegetable garden that would feed them through winter. More importantly, the loneliness that had settled into her bones during the dark years. After her father's death had lifted like morning fog. "Easy, girl," she heard Kieran murmur to the mare. His voice held the same patient gentleness he'd shown Cordelia. Those first uncertain weeks, as they'd learned to trust each other. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her look up from her work. A buckboard wagon rolled into the yard, driven by Agnes Holloway, the preacher's wife. Behind her sat 3 other women from town, all wearing expressions of barely contained excitement. Cordelia wiped her hands on her apron and stepped onto the porch. "Mrs. Holloway. Ladies, what brings you out this way?" Agnes practically bounced on the wagon seat. "Oh, Cordelia dear, we've come with the most wonderful news." In the corral, Kieran had paused his work with the Mustang, clearly listening while pretending not to. Cordelia hid a smile. For all his dangerous reputation, the man was endearingly curious about small-town gossip. "The territorial governor himself is coming through Millhaven next week," Agnes announced breathlessly. "And he specifically asked to meet you and Mr. Blackthorne. Apparently word of how you two stood up to those land grabbers has spread all the way to Denver." "That's flattering," Cordelia said carefully. "But I'm not sure what the governor would want with us." "Why? To thank you, of course. And perhaps," Agnes leaned forward conspiratorially, "perhaps to discuss Mr. Blackthorne taking a position as territorial marshal. Seems his reputation with a gun has certain folks very interested in his services." Cordelia's heart lurched. She glanced toward Kieran, who had gone very still. A marshal's position would mean prestige, steady pay, and a chance to use his skills for legitimate law enforcement. It would also mean constant travel and danger. "We'll have to discuss it," Cordelia managed. After the women left in a flutter of excitement and speculation, Kieran walked slowly toward the porch. His expression was unreadable, but she'd learned to recognize the signs of internal struggle. "Marshall," she said when he stopped at the foot of the steps, "that's what it seems. It's what you were born for, isn't it? Making sure justice prevails?" He looked out across the land they'd worked so hard to improve. "Maybe once, but that was before." "What?" "Before I found something worth more than reputation or duty." He climbed the steps to stand before her, his gray eyes intense. "Cordelia, I need to tell you something." Her pulse quickened. "What?" "I love you." The words hung between them like suspended starlight. Cordelia felt tears prick her eyes as months of careful restraint finally crumbled. "I was beginning to think you'd never say it," she whispered. "You knew? A woman knows when a man watches her the way you do. When he finds excuses to touch her hand. When he sits a little closer by the fire each night." She reached up to cup his face. "I love you too, Kieran. Have since that first day when you saw past everyone else's assumptions to the truth." He pulled her against him, and she reveled in the solid strength of his embrace. "Then you understand why I can't take that. Martial position? Can't? Or won't?" Cordelia, being a territorial marshal, means months away from home, means facing down the worst men in the territory, means ... double quotes. He paused, struggling with the words. "It's possibly never coming home to you." She pulled back to look at him seriously. "And what does staying here mean? Playing it safe while knowing you're capable of so much more? It means building a life with you, raising children on this land, growing old together. Children who would be proud to call a territorial marshal their father. A life built on the foundation of work that matters." She traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "Kieran, I didn't fall in love with a man who plays it safe. I fell in love with someone who steps forward when others step back." "You really want me to take the position? I'd want you to take it, if it's what you truly want, and I'd want to be by your side when you do." His eyes widened. "Cordelia, marry me, Kieran Blackthorne. Make me your partner in everything, the dangerous parts and the peaceful ones." The Millhaven Church had never seen such a wedding. Every pew overflowed with townspeople who had come to witness the union of the woman who'd nearly died for truth and the man who'd saved her. Wildflowers from the mountain meadows decorated the altar, their sweet fragrance mingling with the scent of beeswax candles. Cordelia stood at the back of the church. In her mother's wedding dress, cream silk that had waited 20 years in a cedar chest for this moment. The dress fit perfectly, as if destiny had measured her for it long ago. Her dark hair was crowned with a circlet of white roses that Kieran had picked at dawn, his hands surprisingly gentle with the delicate blooms. "Ready?" asked Deputy Fletcher, who had offered to walk her down the aisle in her father's place. Cordelia nodded, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Through the open church doors, she could see Kieran waiting at the altar in his black suit, the silver star of a territorial marshal pinned to his lapel. He'd accepted the governor's offer the day after their private proposal, but only after making it clear that his wife would accompany him wherever duty called. The organ began to play, and every head turned as Cordelia began her walk toward the future. Kieran's face transformed when he saw the careful control he usually maintained dissolving into pure wonder. She'd never felt more beautiful than she did under that look. Preacher Holloway's voice carried clearly through the packed church as he began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Kieran Blackthorne and Cordelia Thorne." The familiar words washed over her, but Cordelia was lost in Kieran's eyes. In them, she saw promises beyond the formal vows promises, of adventure and partnership, of facing whatever came together. "Do you, Kieran, take Cordelia to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, till death do you part?"
"I
do." His voice was steady, certain. "And do you, Cordelia, take Kieran to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, till death do you part?" "Do." The words came from the deepest part of her soul. "Then, by the power vested in me, by the territory of Colorado, I pronounce you husband and wife. Kieran, you may kiss your bride." He cupped her face in his hands with infinite gentleness, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "Mrs. Blackthorne," he murmured, "just for her." "Marshall Blackthorne," she whispered back. Their kiss was soft, reverent, full of promise. The congregation erupted in cheers and applause as they turned to face their friends and neighbors as a married couple. The celebration that followed spilled from the church into the town square, where tables groaned under the weight of food contributed by every family in Millhaven. Children darted between adults, their laughter mixing with fiddle music and the stomp of dancing feet as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Kieran and Cordelia found themselves alone for a moment on the church steps. She leaned against his side, marveling at how perfectly they fit together. "Any regrets?" he asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Only one," he tensed. "What's that?" "That it took a hanging to bring us together." She smiled up at him, though I suppose some might say that's appropriate. "After all, you've got me completely tied up now." His laugh was rich and warm. "Terrible joke, Mrs. Blackthorne. You married?" "Me, anyway. Best decision I ever made." Agnes Holloway bustled over, her face flushed with excitement and elderberry wine. "Oh, you too. Such a romantic story. A drifter saves the innocent maiden. They fall in love, and now he's a marshal and she's his partner in adventure. Why? It's like something from one of those dime novels. Except it's real," Cordelia said, threading her fingers through Kieran's. "The best stories usually are," Agnes agreed. "Now come along. Time to cut the cake." As they rejoined the celebration, Cordelia caught sight of a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. An elderly Apache woman stood in the shadows, watching them with dark, knowing eyes. When their gazes met, the woman nodded once, a gesture of respect and approval before melting back into the darkness. "Who was that?" Cordelia asked. Kieran followed her gaze, but the woman had vanished. "Someone who understands that justice takes many forms," he said quietly. "And that sometimes the best endings come from the worst beginnings." The music swelled around them as they cut their wedding cake, feeding each other sweet bites while their friends cheered. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, outlaws to catch, justice to uphold, dangers to face. But tonight was theirs, perfect, and shining with possibility. 6 months later, Cordelia sat in the parlor of their temporary quarters in Durango, mending a tear in Kieran's shirt while he cleaned his guns at the kitchen table. The domesticity of the scene belied the danger they'd faced just days before, when they'd tracked a gang of bank robbers into the San Juan Mountains. "How's the shoulder?" she asked, glancing at the bandage visible through his unbuttoned shirt. "Your nursing skills are almost as impressive as your tracking abilities." He looked up from reassembling his Colt, though I still say you took too big a risk following me up that cliff face. "Someone had to watch your back. Besides, I grew up in these mountains. That cliff was nothing compared to the ones I climbed." As a child, their partnership had proven more effective than anyone had imagined. Cordelia's knowledge of the Colorado Territory's remote areas, combined with her ability to blend in where Kieran's reputation preceded him, made them formidable. She'd also discovered an unexpected talent for reading people's intentions, skill that had saved their lives more than once. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Kieran's hand moved instinctively to his weapon as she rose to answer. "It telegrammed for Marshall Blackthorne," announced the young messenger. Cordelia tipped him and closed the door, studying the yellow paper with growing curiosity. "It's from Denver. Official seal." Kieran set aside his gun and opened the telegram. As he read, his expression grew increasingly grim. "What is it?" Cordelia asked, settling beside him. "Remember Marcus Vance? The man who tried to steal my land? I thought he was in prison." "He was. Past tense." Kieran handed her the telegram. "Escaped 3 days ago during a prisoner transport. Killed 2 guards in the process." Cordelia's blood chilled as she read the details. Vance had not only escaped, but had sworn vengeance against those who'd destroyed his criminal enterprise. The telegram specifically warned that he'd made threats against Marshall and Mrs. Blackthorne. "He's coming for us," she said quietly. "Appears so. The question is when and where." Kieran stood and began pacing, his mind clearly working through possibilities. He's got money hidden somewhere. probably allies willing to help for the right price. What do we do? Could request reassignment to another territory? Start fresh where Vance can't find us. Cordelia studied her husband's face. But you don't want to run, do you? She considered the question seriously. Running would mean safety, at least temporarily. But it would also mean living in fear, constantly looking over their shoulders, never truly free. No, she said finally. I don't want to run. This man has already tried to kill me once. I won't give him power over our lives by hiding from him. Kieran's smile was fierce with pride. I was hoping you'd say that. So what's the plan? We make ourselves visible. Let him come to us on ground of our choosing. He pulled her into his arms. But Cordelia, this won't be like tracking ordinary criminals. Vance is smart, ruthless, and he has nothing left to lose. Thing he's facing to people who have everything to fight for? Their kiss was interrupted by another knock at the door. This time Kieran answered, his hand resting on his gun butt. Deputy Morrison, he said, recognizing the local lawman. What brings you here so late? Bad news, Marshal? Body turned up this morning at the Miller Ranch outside town. Old man Miller and his wife, both shot execution style. Morrison's face was grim. But here's the strange part. Nothing was stolen. Whoever did this left money on the table, jewelry untouched. Professional work, Kieran said grimly. Someone sending a message. That's what we figured, especially when we found this pinned to Miller's shirt. Morrison handed over a piece of paper. Cordelia read over Kieran's shoulder, her heart sinking. The message was brief. The debt comes due at sunset tomorrow. Millhaven Cemetery. Come alone, or more innocents die. MV. He's escalating faster than I expected, Kieran muttered. Kieran, Cordelia said quietly. The Millers were friends of my father. They came to our wedding. I know. His jaw tightened. Which means Vance isn't just after revenge, he's trying to hurt you specifically. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. Marshal, you're not seriously considering meeting this man. Alone? No, Cordelia said before Kieran could answer. He's not going alone because I'll be there too. Cordelia, no arguments. He made this personal when he killed the Millers. We end this together, or we don't end it at all. Kieran looked at her. For a long moment, then nodded slowly. Together then, but we do this smart. Vance wants a showdown. We'll give him one, which is not the kind he's expecting. The Millhaven Cemetery stretched across a low hill overlooking the town, its weathered headstones casting long shadows in the dying light. Among them stood the fresh grave of Cordelia's father, marked by a simple wooden cross that Kieran had, carved with his own hands. He's already here, Kieran murmured, studying the landscape through his field glasses, when two men with rifles in the trees behind the church. At least three more positioned among the larger monuments. Cordelia crouched beside him behind the cemetery's stone wall, her own rifle loaded and ready. Where's Vance? There. Kieran pointed toward a large marble angel that marked the Harwick family plot, standing right where he can see the main gate, confident of his trap, or desperate enough not to care about the risks. Kieran lowered the glasses. You remember the plan? Circle wide through the Johnson property, come up behind the church, neutralize the riflemen. Then signal you when it's clear. And if something goes wrong, get to the rendezvous point and wait for backup. She touched his cheek gently. Nothing's going wrong. We've faced worse odds. Not against someone with Vance's resources and motivation. A church bell chimed in the distant 6 o'clock. Sunset was in 30 minutes. Time to move, Kieran said. They separated as planned. Cordelia slipping away into the gathering dusk, while Kieran made his way toward the cemetery's main entrance. Her heart pounded as she crept through tall grass and scrub brush, every shadow potentially hiding an enemy. The first rifleman never knew what hit him. Cordelia's approach was silent as moonlight, and the butt of her rifle connected with his skull before he could cry out. The second proved more alert, spinning as a twig snapped under her foot. But her shot took him down before his rifle cleared its rest. She signaled Kieran, with a flash of mirror light reflected from the moon. Began working her way toward the cemetery proper. From her new position, She could see Vance clearly for the first time in months. Prison had changed him. He was thinner, harder, the desperate edge of a cornered animal. Kieran appeared at the cemetery gate right on schedule, walking with the confident stride that had first caught her attention. He stopped 50 feet from Vance, well within talking distance, but far enough to dive for cover if needed. "Vance," he called out calmly. "You wanted to see me, Marshal Blackthorne?"
Oh.
"Good of you to come," Vance's voice carried clearly in the still air. "Though I notice you brought uninvited guests." Kieran's expression didn't change. "My wife tends to be protective." "Your wife," Vance spat in the dirt. "The woman who ruined everything I'd worked for. Do you know what prison is like for a man, am I?" "Refinement. I imagine it was educational." "Oh, it was. It taught me the value of patience, of planning, making sure that when you finally get your revenge, it's absolutely perfect." Vance smiled, showing too many teeth. "Which is why I'm not here to kill you quickly, Marshal. I'm here to take everything from you the way you took everything from me, by murdering innocent people. By making you watch the woman you love die slowly, knowing it's your fault for interfering in my business." The words were still leaving Vance's mouth when Cordelia's rifle spoke from her position behind the marble angel. The shot took one of Vance's hidden gunmen squarely in the chest, spinning him away from his covering monument. Chaos erupted as the remaining assassins opened fire. Kieran dove behind a headstone as bullets sparked off marble and granite. Cordelia worked her lever-action rifle with practiced efficiency, her shots forcing Vance's men to keep their heads down, but Vance was no fool. Instead of engaging in a firefight he couldn't win, he began retreating toward a horse hidden behind the cemetery's rear wall. Kieran saw the movement and broke from cover, racing between headstones in pursuit. "Kieran, no!" Cordelia shouted. But her husband was already committed to the chase. Vance reached his horse and swung into the saddle. But instead of fleeing immediately, he wheeled the animal around and drew a rifle from its scabbard. The weapon swung toward Kieran, who was caught in the open between monuments. Time slowed to crystalline clarity for Cordelia. She could see everything. Vance's finger tightening on the trigger, Kieran diving desperately for cover, the certain knowledge that he wouldn't make it in time. Without conscious thought, she stood and ran. Placing herself between the rifle and her husband, the shot boomed across the cemetery. Cordelia felt the bullet's impact like a sledgehammer blow to her chest, spinning her around and driving her to her knees. But even as she fell, her own rifle was coming up, its barrel tracking Vance with mechanical precision. Her shot took him high in the shoulder, the heavy slug tumbling him from the saddle. He hit the ground hard and lay still. Kieran reached her. As she pressed a hand to the spreading crimson on her shirt, "Cordelia, oh God, Cordelia, ... Is he?" "He's down. Don't worry about him." Kieran's hands were gentle but urgent as he examined her wound. "The bullet went through. Missed anything vital. But you're losing blood fast. Good thing you married a tough woman. The toughest." His voice broke slightly. "Stay with me, love. Help's coming." Through dimming vision, she saw townspeople running toward them from Millhaven, drawn by the gunfire. Among them was Doc Patterson, his medical bag already in hand. "I'm not ... going anywhere," she whispered. "We have too much living ... still to do." Kieran's kiss tasted of tears and promises. "Damn right we do." Marshal Kieran Blackthorne sat on the porch of their new home in Colorado Springs, watching his wife tend the garden she'd planted as soon as she was strong enough to hold a shovel. The bullet wound had healed cleanly, leaving only a small scar that she wore like a badge of honor. "The tomatoes are coming along nicely," Cordelia called over, wiping soil from her hands on her apron. The afternoon sun caught the gold in her dark hair, and Kieran marveled that such beauty could be his to wake up to every morning. "Not as nicely as their gardener," he replied, earning himself a playful swat when she joined him on the porch swing he'd built with his own hands. "Flatterer," she settled beside him, her head finding its natural place on his shoulder. "Any word from Denver about the new assignment? Came in this morning?" He pulled a telegram from his shirt pocket. "They want us to investigate a string of silver mine robberies up in Leadville. Seems someone's been very systematic about hitting the most productive claims." "When do we leave?" We don't have to take it, Cordelia.
You're after what happened with Vance.
I'm tightening around her. Almost lost you. Maybe it's time to consider a different line of work. She lifted her head to look at him seriously. Kieran Blackthorne, are you suggesting we retire? I'm suggesting we have options. Governor Morrison offered me a position as head of territorial security. Good pay, mostly desk work, based right here in Colorado Springs, and you'd be bored senseless within a month. She traced the silver star on his vest with gentle fingers. This is who you are, who we are. Besides, someone needs to make sure. Justice reaches the places where law fears to tread, even if it means more danger. More nights wondering if we'll both make it home? Cordelia was quiet for a long moment, watching a pair of hawks circle high above the mountains. Do you remember what you told me that first night by your campfire? When I asked why you saved me, I said maybe I knew enough. You knew I was worth saving before you had any proof. You saw something in me that even I didn't see. She turned in his arms to face him fully. That's what we do, Kieran.
Yeah, we see the truth.
When others see only what they want to see, we stand up when others sit down. And yes, sometimes we get shot for it. Sometimes we nearly die for it. Sometimes we live for it. Her smile was radiant. Every criminal we catch, every innocent person we protect, every injustice we prevent, that's a life well lived. That's a marriage with meaning. He cupped her face in his calloused hands. How did I get so lucky? He had the good sense to cut. Down the right woman, from the right gallows at the right time. Their kiss was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Kieran's hand moved instinctively toward his gun, but relaxed when he recognized Deputy Fletcher and a young woman riding beside him. Marshal. Mrs. Blackthorne, Fletcher called as he dismounted. Sorry to disturb your Sunday rest, but we've got a situation that can't wait. The young woman who slid from the second horse was barely 18, with haunted eyes and clothes that had seen hard travel. Wait. Please, she said urgently. They said you were the only ones who could help. What's your name, miss? Cordelia asked. Gently rising from the swing. Magnolia Crane, from Leadville. My father owns Ond. The lucky strike mine. Kieran and Cordelia exchanged glances. Owned? Kieran prompted. They killed him 3 days ago. Made it look like an accident, but I saw them. Tears ran down the girl's face. And the same men who've been robbing the other mines. They're not just stealing silver. They're murdering anyone who won't sell out to their boss. Who's their boss? Cordelia asked. Magnolia's voice dropped to a whisper. Vincent Morrison, the governor's brother. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. If true, it meant corruption reached the highest levels of territorial government. It also meant their next case would be their most dangerous yet. Miss Crane, Kieran said carefully. Those are serious accusations against a very powerful man. I know what I saw, and I know they're coming for me next. You're my only hope. Cordelia moved to stand beside her husband, their shoulders touching in silent unity. Then I guess we're going to Leadville after all. Kieran's smile was grim but determined. Looks like retirement will have to wait. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Marshal Kieran Blackthorne and his wife began planning their most perilous mission yet. But they faced it as they faced everything else together, unafraid, and absolutely certain that justice was worth any price. Some stories, Kieran thought as he watched Cordelia comfort the frightened girl, were written not in books, but in lives well lived. And theirs was far from over in the annals of Colorado Territory law enforcement. Marshal Kieran Blackthorne and his wife Cordelia became legends not just for their skill in tracking criminals, but for their unwavering commitment to justice and each other. Their partnership, forged in the shadow of a gallows and tempered in the crucible of danger, proved that the strongest bonds are those built on shared purpose and unshakable trust. They worked together for 23 years, bringing law to the lawless corners of the American West. And their love story became the stuff of frontier legend, testament to the truth that sometimes the best endings begin with the most desperate circumstances.